I've always taken as my mantra the William Faulkner's words in his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, where he said, the human heart in conflict with itself is the only thing worth writing about. The human heart in conflict with itself is the only thing worth writing about.
Throughout all of human history, all around the world, whether drawn on the walls of caves, passed down through oral tradition, or written down to stand the test of time, we as a species have been telling and retelling each other stories. Stories that tell us where we come from, where we're going, stories that tell us of heroes and villains, of myths and monsters, love and war, laughter and pain, stories about ourselves, told to each other, and then told again. If our blood and our genes tell us what we are, our stories tell us who we are. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone is listening to their story. As a game that centers around a world co-created by legendary game director Hidetaka Miyazaki and the fantasy author titan George R. R. Martin, Elden Ring is a lot of things, but most importantly, it is a story that lends itself to being told. The works of Martin and Miyazaki have both found a way to capture audiences with their use of environmental storytelling that build rich and complex fantasy worlds which are delicately interwoven into the tales of character drama that sometimes spans generations, all the while being the backdrops for otherworldly mysteries in a way that an entire culture and even industry has developed into retelling and sharing their stories. Forums, message boards, chat rooms, and hours upon hours of videos dedicated to analyzing, breaking down, and explaining their works forever and ever, even if nobody else is watching or listening. Most importantly, though, are people sharing what they think about these stories, what they mean, and what they're trying to tell us. That is something so uniquely human. Miyazaki and Martin tell their stories in very distinctive ways, not just respectively of each other, but even within their own spaces. George R. R. Martin is a meticulous writer who crafts his stories in a way that lends themselves to being rewarding rereads. A Song of Ice and Fire is a prime example of this. Each chapter is told from the point of view of one of the dozens of characters throughout the series, each of them with their own unique histories, perspectives, personalities, and stories. You cannot get the whole picture of what's going on just by reading the chapters of one of the characters, because each character only knows as much as they know. Seemingly insignificant details, repeated imagery, references, prophecies, and cryptic writing all tie together in telling the story. But it's up to the reader to piece things together between each of these perspectives to paint the full picture. It's up to us to figure out what it all means. The craftsmanship he uses to make sure that nothing is out of place, that everything fits into this fantasy world he has created, is a marvel to behold, though the wait for the last 2 books have been a long one because of it. Not all stories are about their endings, though, and the story that Martin has told so far, and shared with all of us, has done what he has set out to do, and more than he could ever imagine. Even if the story doesn't have an ending, I think it's one of the greatest stories ever told. Miyazaki's games are much the same way, in success and acclaim, but even so with how they tell their stories. Although video games require dozens to even hundreds of people to create, Miyazaki employs a method of control he calls total direction, where the designers are given a great amount of freedom, but Miyazaki gets a final say on all design choices. He will take a very direct approach in some design choices to make sure the story he wants told is present in game. In the Dark Souls Design Works interview, designer Daisuke Satake tells how Miyazaki would go so far as to act out the hand movements for Gravelord Nito and the Ashen Maiden for the introduction cutscene to make sure they were perfect. The movement of these characters is so important to Miyazaki that he will direct the action down to their fingers. While collaborative pieces of art, Miyazaki's games are firmly his vision. In his stories, the player character is always in control. The story is always told from their perspective, and the worlds they travel to are hostile and won't willingly share their secrets. Sometimes it isn't just the worlds these stories take place in, but the stories themselves. More so than any other piece of art I've seen is there a need for people to understand what is actually happening in Miyazaki's games. The opaque nature and how the games tell their stories make it so that reading their narratives can be almost as challenging as playing the games themselves. Information about these worlds and their histories are hidden in the descriptions of items and where those items are found, how the digital castles and statues are designed, and in between the lines of character dialogue. It's up to the player to act as a fantasy anthropologist to figure out how old something is in these worlds, what the purpose of the rituals and customs were, and what your character actually does with any of the fantasy MacGuffins they're set out to chase. Even the characters who exist in these worlds will actively mislead and sometimes lie directly to the player character. And generally, if one character says another character is lying, they're doing so for their own gain, and they may be withholding the truth themselves. But this is all up to the player to figure out. So the marriage of both Martin and Miyazaki was a match made in heaven. And it's no wonder why. Hidetaka Miyazaki has been a long-time fan of George R. R. Martin. Some of Martin's more obscure works like Fever Dream and Tough Voyaging can be found on the shelves next to Japanese manga such as Berserk and Devilman. One is a horror novel that takes place in New Orleans during the American slave trade that follows the conflict of 2 immortal vampires and delves deep into the nature of the evils of men. The other is a science fiction novel that follows one oddball outcast who has one of the few surviving spaceships that has the power to clone and create genetic monstrosities, from dinosaurs, animal-human hybrids, and telepathic cats. He uses this power to solve problems on various planets through ecological chain reactions while being a vehicle to ask hard-hitting questions about morality and the existence of God. Hidetaka Miyazaki being able to make Elden Ring from George R. R. Martin's lore and mythos is not just a dream come true for many of us fans, but I think it was for him too. The collaboration of these two artists has led to a piece of art that I hope can also stand the test of time. I hope that this story persists for others to hear it too. When Martin was a kid growing up in Bayonne, New Jersey, the public housing he lived in wouldn't allow pets like cats or dogs, but they allowed things like turtles. He would tell stories of kings and queens, knights and dragons, how these turtles were plotting against each other trying to take the throne or turtle shell. Martin has said in interviews that those turtles were the forerunners to a Game of Thrones, and most of the time you can find him wearing his signature turtle pin. Hidetaka Miyazaki also grew up poor, but on the other side of the world in Shizuoka, Japan. He loved reading, especially Western fantasy and science fiction novels. He wasn't completely fluent in reading English, so he would use the images in the books to fill in the gaps and essentially write his own story in his head. Many of his games mimic this experience by only giving the player enough information to be able to decide what is going on, but not enough for it to be completely clear. It's up to the audience to fill in the gaps and finish writing the story. These two aspects of both of their childhoods will go on to be foundational in how they write their stories. With Elden Ring, that marriage is complete, and to prove it, nods to both Martin and Miyazaki can be found in the Church of Vows, the wise old turtle who shares most of the history of the world and reveals the stories of how the wars of these lands led to one king marrying one queen just to leave her for another queen. Behind him is a statue which harbors a secret. This statue is the only one of its kind in Elden Ring, but she shows her face in Miyazaki's previous games. Only a superfan of both Martin and Miyazaki would know that Muriel is a reference to those dime store turtles in New Jersey, and that this statue isn't depicting Queen Marika the Eternal, but Keitha, goddess of tears, the false name for one feared by gods and worshipped by the undead. Velka, goddess of sin. For each sin, there is a punishment, and it is the task of goddess Velka to define the sin and mete out the punishment. The invisible hand that hovered over Lordran, which brought dark wings, dark words, and a dark world. This is why we retell these stories. When I retell the story of Elden Ring, I like to focus on the themes of remembering, mourning, and healing. And I do that by telling the story of these things. The formless life forms known as silver tears. They are creatures of mimicry. They're shapeshifters, changeling, doppelgangers, skinwalkers. Their names are lies. The faces they wear are not their own. They are no one. But they're not nothing. And I love them. I love them so much, I don't even know how to put it into words. In Elden Ring, you can find them imitating almost anything and everything. Plants, animals, mushrooms, men, monsters, gods, and even fire. They're hidden in plain sight. They're in places you would least expect, and they can look just like you or me. The only way to tell the story of these tears, the only way to reveal these creatures of mimicry, we first have to tell the story of what they're trying to imitate. Elden Ring is a long story. Some say it's the never-ending story. Its world is built with the same depth and complexity of Westeros, but dilapidated and decaying like Lordran. It's a story that requires the careful reading of every line of text, the inspection of almost every decaying castle, a full reading of George R. R. Martin's entire catalog, a complete understanding of every one of Miyazaki's games, multiple playthroughs, again and again, just to understand what exactly is going on. And yet, it doesn't require any of that. All it really takes is as much as you want it to. These tears have been here the whole time. They'll still be here if you see them or not. It's your choice to look. Roughly a third of the way through the game, your character will have to face off with one of these silver tears. And right before your eyes, they'll transform into an exact copy of your character. Whoever they might be, that is who the tear will be. Upon its defeat, your character will be rewarded with the silver tear mask. Mask fashioned from the corpse of a formless silver tear, supported by its hardened, shed husk. Greatly increases arcane to the detriment of physical power. To imitate the imitator is a cunning play indeed. Perhaps that was the answer all along. So let's put on the mask and tell a story. In times like these, what better place to start than at the end?
What's this?
A Song of Ice and Fire. Archmaester Ebro's history of the wars following the death of King Robert. I helped him with the title.
At the very end of Elden Ring, after felling the last of the fire giants, after the flame of ruin is fed its kindling, and the Erd Tree is burned, the Tarnished of no renown is transported to the ancient royal city of Farum Azula, which has been slowly crumbling since time immemorial to unleash the rune of death. By slaying Malekith, Marika's Black Blade, the forbidden shadow destined death is unbound from its prison, and the Tarnished of no renown awakens to a city of ash in a new world where even gods can die. But before the player can finish the game and see the end credits, their Tarnished must contend with others who covet the throne. They fight Godfrey, first Elden Lord, with the Beast Regent Sarash grafted in gold to his back, who has returned from the dead to be granted an audience once more. Halfway through the fight, the truth is revealed. He was no god after all. He isn't even the first Elden Lord, but a simple warrior named Hoarlu. He was chosen by Marika the Eternal for his bestial nature and sheer propensity to commit violence, so he could lay waste to all who stood in her way, confine the flame atop the mount, and brandish the Elden Ring for the age of the Erd Tree, sealing the fate of gods and men. After his defeat, the path to the Elden Ring is clear. By touching the golden light, your Tarnished is transported to the inside of the Erd Tree and witnesses the truth that have been shown all along. Queen Marika the Eternal has been crucified on a golden rune arc, her punishment for shattering the Elden Ring, the sacrifice she made to collapse the order she created. As the rune arc breaks around her wrists, she falls to the ground, and then, in a flash of light, she transforms into her other self, Radagon of the Golden Order, the second Elden Lord, her Leal Hound, who set everything in order for your Tarnished to make it here, who repaired the Elden Ring while Marika shattered it, so your Tarnished could reforge the world anew. She was never just Marika. When Radagon is slain, the shadows within the husk of his body that once held the Elden Ring leak out, and the vassal of the greater will and living incarnation of order, the Elden Beast, is freed from the shadows. The god that was is reforged into a sword, and a current of primeval energy is unleashed, the arena changing from inside of the Erd Tree to the heavenly sphere from beyond. The light of the sun low in the horizon, the sky full of stars, and pillars of gold stretching as far as the eye can see. As the final fight in Elden Ring, most players should have upgraded their Tarnished weapons to its maximum using an ancient dragon smithing stone, a scale from the ancient Dragon Lord, the Elden Lord of the age before the Erd Trees, the Elden Lord before Godfrey. In a time long past, the oldest and vilest dragon of them all, the tyrant Baal the Dread, turned on the Dragon Lord Placidusax to end his reign and maintain his dreadful rule. Although the Dragon King's power was that of primeval lightning, their battle left both Lord and Tyrant mortally wounded. So the Dragon Lord retreated to his seat at the heart of the storm beyond time. Though, what is a lord without a god? Once his god was fled, the Lord continued to await its return. And in doing so, the days of his realm's reign grew shorter, until the gloam of twilight took hold. Eternally dwelling beyond time, the gravel-stone scales of the ancient Dragon Lord which granted him immortality also lightly twists time, allowing for the creation of a weapon capable of slaying a god. Smithing Master Hugh of the Round Table Hold was tasked by the Eternal Queen to smith a god-slaying weapon, for which he has done so tirelessly. To fulfill his promise to Marika, that weapon is crafted for your Tarnished. Masterpiece in hand, as the Elden Beast falls, the banner God Slain appears across the screen. The power of the Dragon Lord's gravelstone scales, the power of primeval lightning, lightly twists time, causing the Elden Beast to revert back into the Elden Ring, as well as undoing the reforging, death, and transformation of Marika, leaving the fight that just transpired to only exist in memory. Having been freed from her imprisonment, as she always planned to be, your Tarnished is given a choice. If they played the Game of Thrones and have runes to mend the Elden Ring, your Tarnished can touch the fractured Marika and in a flash of light bring about a new age and a new order. If you were convinced by an ascetic who could see all for what it was and all that it could be, determined that a world built purely on causality and regression was perfect, then you could choose the Age of Order to maintain the Golden Order in perpetuity. If you were compelled by an ancient dragon in the form of a priestess that what is dead may never die, then you could choose the Age of the Duskborn to resurrect the fated realm of the soulless sun and embed the principle of life within death into order. And if you found that the depraved and vile acts of the loathsome should be brought onto the world's children, grandchildren, and every generation hence to make all equal in suffering and torment, you could choose the blessing of despair, to curse the world with horns sent to defile all souls. Or, if none of those options seemed appealing, your tarnished could rule over an age of fracture, an empty vessel for a broken world. There is no happy choice, only one less grievous than the others. However, nothing truly lasts forever. These ages and these orders are just the backdrop to the eternal war. If you had no interest in the Game of Thrones, perhaps you were tempted by the Song of Ice and Fire. In 1923, Robert Frost penned the poem Fire and Ice to explore the idea of how the world might end. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. After enduring every obstacle, enduring every defeat, enduring every tragedy, hardship, and loss, you could have your tarnished inherit the flame of frenzy and melt it all away. Perhaps to save a friend they loved. You could strip your tarnished of their identity, their history, their memories. Your tarnished could become the lord of frenzied flame, even if it meant breaking her heart. A lord that would end all life, destroy all souls, and extinguish all thought, take away all pain, prevent all suffering. A lord of cinder and ash. The tarnished would be no more, and in a flash of light, the lands between wouldn't be either. Fire consumes. It consumes, and when it is done, there is nothing left. Nothing. As the flames of chaos consumes all, your tarnished's faithful steed would burn away into nothing. And Melina, having learned who she was, would peer into your eyes with a vortex of dusk, regret, and wrath. Perhaps, even after your crimes, there will be repose for your soul. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Long ago, the Nox invoked the ire of the greater will and were banished deep underground. Now they live under a false night sky, an eternal anticipation of their liege, of their coming age of stars, and their lord of night. Through mimicry and treachery, beneath a world of their mother's making, you could be lured into having your tarnished become this lord of night. With America's body dissipating into golden dust, a new vessel is required for the Elden Ring. So one of her last surviving children, her soul preserved in a puppet, will call the cold a cold, dark moon, the only vault great enough for order. With the Elden Ring imprisoned in ice and frost, the lands between would be thrust into 1,000-year winter. With no sun and no light, a chill night will encompass all, reaching the great beyond. The world above would journey into fear, doubt, and loneliness. Where fire consumes, cold preserves. Only those accustomed to the dark would survive in the face of utter scarcity. Only those cloaked in icy tempests or a false night would live on. Only the songs of shamans in an Eden beneath the earth would last into the future. As the path stretches into darkness, the only two to continue on this voyage, with the memory of the world that was, the only people with the faintest clue of what an Elden Ring is or what it could do, would be your tarnished and their cold, unfeeling, peculiar doll, forever and ever. All else would be sacrifices for the winds of winter. No happy choices and no happy endings. Then, one last choice. Begin Journey 2?
What does he want?
An endless night. He wants to erase this world, and I am its memory.
Well, that's what death is, isn't it? Forgetting.
The fallen leaves tell a story.
There are many steps to this journey, but the first step is always remembering. Your Tarnished awakens to the tolling of a mausoleum's bell, and the grace of Marika fills their palm to give them life once more. As they stand inside of the Erd Tree, a flash of light envelops them, and they are brought to the Chapel of Anticipation.
To stand before the Elden Ring.
So that you may lull the old one back to slumber.
And become the Elden Lord.
The world has reset. Time has gone backwards. All of the pieces are put back into place, and no one remembers the journey your Tarnished has taken before, save for you and one other. No matter what origin is chosen for your Tarnished, the first item they will receive is the Memory of Grace. The memory of first grace, which once guided bygone Tarnished to the lands between. It is merely a cycle. Stand before the Elden Ring, become the Elden Lord. It is a memory of the end, and of the beginning, a memory of all that came before and all that would come after. It is a memory of the heavenly domain of the Elden Beast, where Marika reached out to it and where your Tarnished goes to slay it. But before any of that, every time your Tarnished reaches the end of the story, they are confronted with Sir Gideon Ofnir.
Ah, I knew you'd come.
Again.
To stand before the Elden Ring. To become Elden Lord.
And again.
What a sad state of affairs. I commend your spirit, but alas, none shall take the throne.
And again.
Queen Marika has high hopes for us, that we continue to struggle. Unto eternity.
In hand, Gideon holds the Scepter of the All-Knowing. It is in the form of a hand grasping a pearl. The pearl stands for the world, the heavens, and an eye, representing the many forms of knowledge, never fully attainable. Even knowing that, the All-Knowing's hands grasp for it. Without remembering your Tarnished previous journey, he will say,
I know in my bones, a Tarnished cannot become a lord. Not even you. A man cannot kill a god.
Although you have already seen all the endings, although your Tarnished has sat their throne and slain a god, Gideon's right. At the very end of Shadow of the Erd Tree, Elden Ring's sequel-sized expansion pack, your Tarnished travels to a place long forgotten and veiled in shadow, to stand at the top of the White Tower of Anir-Elem, beneath the Gate of Divinity, where Marika reached into a swaddling cloth to shorn light from an abyssal serpent, leaving only darkness in her son, and a fire he despised. His only companions, two intertwined serpents whispering in his ears, all to beckon the Beast of Order from its heavenly sphere so she could imprison it within herself until it was time to shatter. Here, your Tarnished is met by a new voice and a familiar face.
My loyal blade and champion of the festival. Both your deeds will ever be praised in song.
Miquella, the golden child of Queen Marika and Radagon, addresses his sister and your Tarnished, thanking them both for helping return the soul of the son of Ice and Fire, of Queen Rennala and Radagon, his prince that was promised, with swords able to bring slashes of light, reborn among salt and smoke. The horned lion Radahn, Miquella's promised consort, has returned. Halfway through the battle, unable to defeat your Tarnished, he falls to his knees until... stepping through the gate of divinity, from the heavenly realm, bathed in pure unalloyed light,
Lord brother,
Miquella has been reborn as a god, as it was prophesied to be,
at long last you are returned.
to lead the world into a 1,000-year voyage guided by compassion. Miquella sought to accept all that was and would be, but found one that refused to be embraced, the one chosen by Torrent, the spectral steed, befriended by Melina, the kindling maiden, and holder of the spirit calling bell. You and your tarnished. Everything has led to this moment, the clashing of the favored lords, such that one would prevail.
Then yield the path forward to us. To I, Miquella, and my promised consort, Radahn.
When Miquella is slain at the hands of Torrent's chosen, the tarnished of no renown, there is the banner, God slain, and then nothing. Nothing but a memory.
Lord brother.
I thought I was happy. I thought everything I did, I was happy.
Make the world a gentler place.
After everything that Elden Ring was, after this climactic battle at the top of the world against a god and a lord, I think most players expected some grand reveal, some massive reward, or perhaps a different villain and a different foe. Instead, after slaying a god cursed with eternal childhood, the sole reward for the true final challenge is just a memory. Though it's more than a memory. It's the truth. In Salvador Dali's The Persistence of Memory, the landscape is soft and scattered. A desert that leads into the sea. A cliff far out into the distance is given life by light in the skies reflecting its vivid coloration off the water. But then there's the nonsensical. A slab of metal lies at the edge of the horizon. Part of the ground is perfectly elevated and is home to a leafless olive tree with cut branches. An egg lays on the distant shore and is touched by light, while another is lost in shadow. And the visage of some animal, some thing, is lying dead or asleep as its tail end fades into nothingness. But what the persistence of memory is most known for are its clocks, melting and formless and draped over that which is dead and alive. Time is fluid and unreliable. And so too are the tools that we use to tell it. As time marches on, our perception of the world around us can appear absurd. What we remember is not whole and doesn't always make sense. No matter how hard we try to hold on to the ephemeral and intangible, it makes no difference. The only clock to maintain its structure, the only clock where time is hidden, is being consumed by ants. The inevitability of death, destruction, and decay are ever present, and it comes for us all. The lands between is much the same. Both pieces of art are stylistically rooted in realism, yet they transcend the world of reason, challenging our perceptions of reality and making us question what exactly it is we're looking at. Is this just a map of the world? Or does it show a baby? Or a dragon? Or a furrowed finger? Or is it supposed to be a giant petrified tree stump? Through fragmented and symbolic imagery like this, we are meant to reflect how memories can be distorted or selective, inviting us to question the nature of truth and perception, how the inevitability of the future erodes the past, how yesterday is forgotten to make way for tomorrow. By focusing on memory, Elden Ring wants us to confront our own relationships with the past, how it shapes who we are, and how it influences what we'll become. How our memories allow us to preserve the intangible things about ourselves, our emotions, our experiences, and the connections we make with one another. Elden Ring wants to tell a story of the memories we keep, but it also wants to tell a story of the memories that were once forgotten. It wants to tell a story of that which is dead and buried. Stories of ancient civilizations and lost lore that still haunt us like a specter for which there is no deliverance. Memories hewn from shadow that have been lurking and waiting, hidden deep underground and plotting in the dark, biding their time to re-emerge when you least expect. The right memories in the wrong place. R'hllana, a princess of Caria who chased after Marika's abandoned son to join the crusade, was known for her ability to incarnate overlapping twin moons which strike the ground one after the other, violently shaking the earth with moonlight. Found in the destroyed horn-sent town of Morth, a victim of the crusade, is the shattered stone talisman. Linchpin stones are spiritual anchors said to hold the ground in place and quell the fury of earthquakes. When this one shattered, the surrounding town fell into the broken earth, One account claimed that the moon itself had come tumbling down. This wasn't the first time a moon crashed into the earth and a city was swallowed whole. Before Landel was the royal capital, it was the Eternal City built as the base of the Great Tree. But when fragments of the Black Moon fell to the earth, after stars of darkness sent from a lightless abyss rained down upon it, the city was swallowed, forgotten, and destroyed. In order for your Tarnished to be able to cast sorceries or incantations, they must first be memorized by them. In order to increase their memory, your Tarnished must find Memory Stone, black, lightly beguiling stones, fragments of the Black Moon that once hung above the Eternal City, the lost Black Moon of Noxtella. Now, not even the name of the Eternal City is remembered, and only death remains, destroyed by a black, lightly beguiling memory. After the defeat of every major boss, your Tarnished is rewarded with their remembrance, a manifestation of the memory of them at the time they perished that tells of something only they would know, such as the remembrance of the Star Scourge, which tells how the great Red Lion General Radahn, the mightiest of the demigods, learned to wield gravitational powers not so he could become a hero and challenge the stars above, but just so he would never have to abandon his beloved yet scrawny steed. Or the remembrance of the Rock Goddess. Only by defeating Melania, one of the most challenging adversaries in all of Elden Ring, can we look back into her memory to learn that her and Miquella are both children of a single god, of one person, and that Miquella is cursed with eternal childhood. Only through a memory do we learn that time does not move forward for Miquella. These remembrances are only gained from those that have reached a status that deserves remembering, characters whose myths and stories will live on through the histories, who will persist in the collective memory of the people of the Lands Between and those who partake in its story. Legends such as Malekith the Black Blade, R'hllana the Twin Moon Knight, or the Dragon Lord Placidusax. Myths such as the demigods, the children of the Eternal Queen Marika, like Mohg, the Lord of Blood, Mesmer the Impaler, or Rykard, the Lord of Blasphemy. And gods like the Elden Beast and Miquella. The Ashes of War, which give weapons their special abilities, are described by the Knight Bernal as mementos of all the warriors who raised their arms in battle, lost, and died. Your Tarnished is able to throw the lightning spears of ancient dragons, leap through the air making cuts faster than the eye can see, or roar into the sky and emit waves of gravitational force not through training, but through the memories of the weapons they hold. The memories of those who died using them. Though the wielder is dead, the memories of battle live on. A fine tale, all told, of true chivalric romance. The lost Ashes of War are empty ashes devoid of any memories of battle, but allow for the duplication of other Ashes of War. Though these ashes hold no memories of their own, they will remember if given the chance, much like by going to a wandering mausoleum, constructs of the Eternal City, and home to the soulless slumbering demigods. Remembrances can be duplicated, memories can be copied, memories can be made eternal. The memories of legendary heroes, gods and demigods, the memories of battles, the memories of those who came before can be copied. They can be duplicated over and over again and given to someone or something else. This isn't like sharing a photo or recounting a story. This is a one-for-one recreation of someone else's memory physically existing within the world that can be passed down from one another or stored for later use to be remembered later. When we share memories with each other, they become our own, and they're less likely to be forgotten. The act of remembering doesn't have to be a lonely process. Memories act as a bridge between our past experiences and our current understanding of the world. They shape who we are, the perceptions we have of ourselves, and inform us on how to act in the future. By being able to recall someone else's memories, what would that make us? What does it make your Tarnished? By being able to store someone else's memories for later use, to only recall them when the time is right, what does that make Melina? As the Lost Ash of War says, thus does the copy pass into becoming the genuine article. After Queen R'hllana lost her daughter, every star in the night sky died out. Another moon she loved went dark, and she was trapped in a mourning with no end. Her only solace as a mother was to try to bring her child back by any means necessary. Pastor Muriel tells your Tarnished that R'hllana turned to the forbidden rite and grim art of reincarnation. Though one of the greatest champions the Lands Between has ever seen, who bewitched the Academy of Raya Lucaria, who led the Glintstone Knights and established the House of Caria as royalty, she was still a mother. And her daughter's suicide took that all away. She would never hear her laughter again. She would never feel her warmth. She would never see her smile. Remembering was not enough. She needed Ronnie in her life again. With the gift of the Amber Egg and Great Rune of the Unborn from her beloved Radigan, Rennala could try to bring her little dark moon back so they could nestle close together once more. But children born anew by Rennala are all frail and short-lived, imperfect beings, each and all. When completing the resurrection painting by going to the graveyard behind Caria Manor and looking towards the Academy of Raya Lucaria, your Tarnished will be rewarded with a larval tear, the core of a creature of mimicry, and the Juvenile Scholar set, which are the robes worn by young Academy scholars, the juveniles birthed anew by the Amber Egg of Queen Rennala. Their robes say that their rebirth is not without imperfections, and thus do they repeat the process, eventually becoming utterly dependent upon it. Rebirth is as sleep to them, and with each awakening, memory fades into oblivion. While Rennala will never forget what it means to love as a mother, to care for her sweetings fresh and pure, she shed so many tears she sometimes forgets who she's crying for. But you don't. No matter how many larval tears are shed, you'll never forget. Little does Rennala know that her daughter has been watching over her the entire time. The fiery red hair of her father, traded for the icy doll modeled after her secret mentor. Though Ranni could not tell her mother what she had to do or why she had to do it, she will not allow anyone to disturb Rennala's rich slumber. The remembrances your Tarnished holds persist into each journey cycle. While the rest of the world forgets your previous journey, you do not, and neither does your Tarnished. Time can never deteriorate these memories. These remembrances allow your Tarnished to gain many runes, read about the histories and secrets of these characters, and with the help of the finger reader Enya, they can be used to recreate some of that person's items and knowledge like a weapon or a spell. In Elden Ring, memories are literal power. By holding a memory that is so potent, that is so strong, a memory that you can feel, taste, recreate perfectly within your mind, Enya can take it and manifest it into reality. As she says, these remembrances yet house the power of their former masters, and with those memories, your Tarnished can wield that same power. When challenging Rennala, Ranni will beckon a spiral of shadows from the Amber Egg to conjure a memory of her mother. Deep down inside, beneath the shadows of grief, are the memories of the Lunar Queen who once was. And after completing this fight, your Tarnished is rewarded with the remembrance of this version of Rennala, and not how she currently is. For instance, from the remembrance, your Tarnished can create a duplicate of her Carian Regal Scepter, the finest of all glintstone staves, even though the true scepter is found on display in the Academy. Your Tarnished can even recreate the Queen's robes, and while the Rennala of the present does not have a ring on her finger, the shade of her who fought under the light of the full moon, and the robes that can be created from her remembrance do. With the power of these memories, your Tarnished can become a copy of those who made them. Your Tarnished isn't really Malekith the Black Blade, the black beast of destined death, but they can mimic him. The remembrance items also read that they are either hewn into the Erd Tree or hewn into the Shadow Tree. To hewn is to chop or cut something, generally from wood or stone, and turn into something else, like chopping a tree to make a throne. In this context, the memories of the slain and dead are shaped into the Erd Tree and Shadow Tree. This makes the Erd Tree and Shadow Tree the embodiment of the collective experiences, histories, and memories of the people of the lands between and the Land of Shadow, intertwining their essence into their beings. These trees and the power derived from them are made of memories. When your Tarnished brings their first remembrance to Enya, she also adds that when the greater of champions reach their ends, the Erd Tree hews them into remembrances. So not only is the Erd Tree made of memories, it's creating new ones as well. Some are memories of light and gold, of goodness and revelry, tales of romance and kindness and joy, while others are memories of shadow, dark and twisted, and better left hidden from others. Memories that hurt, memories that frighten, memories that kill. Two separate histories, two separate memories. Throughout the entirety of the game, Queen Marika is shown symbolically as one with the Erd Tree. The statues foretelling her crucifixion are painted in a way that show her either hung up on the Erd Tree's branches, or that she is mimicking the pose of a tree. The Erd Tree's favor talismans show Marika herself as the trunk of the Erd Tree, with branches and leaves sprouting from her shoulders and legs as she pours out the Erd Tree's blessings. It is said that when the age of the Erd Tree began, such blessings were personally bestowed upon their recipients by Queen Marika herself. Those blessings are sacred tears, and although the Blessed Dew talisman depicts it as just drops of sap,
And I remembered all of the feelings.
the icon shield confirms that these are tears from the Erd Tree. However, trees can't cry. So who's crying? In the Shaman village, near Elden, the Halig Tree, the depths of the fissure, and the Rao ruins, do we learn the truth of the matter. We learn the origin of the trees and the truth of Marika and her kin. Trees can cry, because they're more than trees. They are women. They're people. They're Newman, long-lived but seldom born, who came from outside of the lands between. They are the children of the forest, and the trees remember. In the Shaman village, the grandmother is one with the tree and flowers, stationary between her roots. In a near limb, the form and feature of women are embedded into the golden trees. At the Halig tree, Mikola was embedded into the womb of a mother tree, and Melania bloomed into a scarlet flower. In the depths of the fissure, Mikola's other half, Saint Trina, is found as a child cradled in a lily. And in the Rawa ruins, an aspect of the crucible is discovered. The aspect of bloom, the aspect of the Miranda flowers, who can create light, spew poison, and scream when lit on fire. In an age long past, before this land was enshrouded in shadow, the vitality of the crucible flourished, and so too did its mother. As she was the queen of Rao, Marika the Eternal is the queen of the Erd Tree. She is the master of the memories, of all the memories that were and all the memories that would be, of all the pain and all the joy, of all that's held dear and all that's repressed, of new memories and duplicated memories, of what's remembered and what's forgotten. And when Mikola embedded himself into the Halig tree, he remembered too. Then, his branches changed the story.
You're the three-eyed raven.
I've been many things. Now, I am what you see.
My brother, he led us to you, and now
He knew what would happen. From the moment he left, he knew, and he went anyway.
How do you know?
I've been watching you. All of you. All of your lives. With 1,000 eyes and one.
Time is different for a tree than for a man. Sun and soil and water, these are the things a weirwood understands, not days and years and centuries. For men, time is a river. We are trapped in its flow, hurtling from past to present, always in the same direction. The lives of trees are different. They root and grow and die in one place, and that river does not move them. The oak is the acorn is the oak. And the weirwood? 1,000 human years are a moment to a weirwood, and through such gates, you and I may gaze into the past. The Round Table Hold, but more specifically the Table of Lost Grace, is, as the game's tooltip explains, a place located outside of this world and can only be reached through sites of grace, the tiny golden aura that comes from the Erd Tree. This is because there are in fact 2 Round Table Holds, the original location being the fortified manor in the royal capital of Leyndell, an old Sunrealm fort built within the Golden City at the base of the Erd Tree. And then there is the Table of Lost Grace. Through the power of the Erd Tree and the grace of Marika, the memory of the Round Table Hold can be duplicated and copied. Much like a remembrance or an ash of war, its power can be harnessed by the one who walks alongside Flame as the Table of Lost Grace. Thus, does the copy pass into becoming the genuine article. Where the fortified manor is cold and empty, save for some commoners sitting around a cookfire, the Table of Lost Grace is lively. There are tarnish still present, and if you listen closely near the giant site of grace at the center, you can hear the idle chatter of champions, the clanging of glasses and plates, the old memories of those who once frequented these halls. There is warmth to be found in this memory. This place is linked to the fires of the past, and because of that, it can still produce its light. Out in the world, the finger reader crones have their backs bent with age and have mostly lost their wits. But the finger reader Enya is much younger, as well as more composed. She even has one of the last pair of living 2 fingers for her to play translator for, while the rest of them have been dead for some time. Though, this isn't really a pair of 2 fingers. This is just a memory. In their place at the fortified manor is a throne and the coated sword. Hidden sword once granted to the tarnished of the Round Table Hold by the Two Fingers. Champions would gather at the Round Table Hold in days long past, when the Two Fingers were masters of oration, their flesh yet full of vigor. And where your tarnished would normally find smithing master Hugh chained to the wall, indebted to the queen to craft a god-slaying weapon, there's just his hammer. At the end of the story, when the fell god's undying flames burn the Erd Tree and Death's shadow is released back into the world, the memories it is hewn from also begin to burn, and those made of memories begin to fade away. The table of lost grace begins to burn, and so too does its prisoner. Hugh tells your tarnished,
I can't hold on much longer. I'm going the way of the Round Table.
He has been smithing your tarnished weapons for the entire story, yet after the Round Table burns, he doesn't recognize them. He barely even recognizes himself. He can't remember the tarnished, the rebellion, becoming a champion, the strength of giants. He just remembers how to be a blacksmith. Then, when looking towards Roderica, he'll say,
Why does that girl weep for me? Oh. Have I forgotten something of dire importance?
Being forgotten can sometimes hurt more than being scorned. Although a spirit tuner, the pain Roderica feels facing the ghost of the man who loved her like she was his own daughter is none I hope any of you have to bear. And if you do, you're not alone. My heart goes out to you. Thankfully though, future journeys, despite being taken with grief, Hugh will recognize the power Roderica has within herself, just by looking back into her eyes.
I saw another one like her long ago. Their eyes share the same hue.
And Melina, the burned and bodiless Melina, traveling companion, kindling maiden, and friend. She is searching for what was given to her by her mother inside of the Erd Tree. She is searching for the reason she still yet lives, burned and bodiless, for that has been lost to her. It too has been forgotten. In exchange for the strength of runes, your tarnished must do one simple thing for her. Your tarnished must bring her to the Erd Tree, so she can remember more than just Marika's echoes, so she can remember her purpose, so she can remember as the trees remember, so she can remember who she is, that she has long observed the lands between, and that this world is in dire need of repair, so she can know that regardless of her mother's designs, that however ruined this world has become, however mired in torment and despair, life endures, births continue, that although this purpose was given to her by her mother, she is acting of her own volition. Her heart is set upon the world that she would have. If you play Shadow of the Erd Tree, your tarnished travels to a long-forgotten place where none would tread. As the Shadowman militia armor puts it, these are forbidden lands that will be excised from the memory of history, the memories hidden in shadow that none should have to remember. Memories of loss, memories of pain, memories of abandonment, and memories of abuse. Memories of hands and fingers reaching, touching, grabbing. These fingers have been here for a long time. They've had their hands everywhere they don't belong. In the Round Table Hold, urging tarnished to slay the demigods. In the mountaintops of the giants, their symbols in the giant conquering's hero's grave, commending those who eradicated those of fire and flame. In the lands of Caria, attempting to use a girl like she was their doll. And on the heads of the ancient dragons, in crumbling Far Missoula beyond time, weaving their lies and playing their games to take what they want, to pit lord against tyrant. But one survivor would not acquiesce, their struggle hidden in shadow. This is where Queen Marika became a god, a well-kept secret until her son learned the truth. When Miquella remembered, he came here to do just the same. One of the most important items in all of Elden Ring is the Bewitching Branch. When your tarnished reaches Mogwyn Palace, the All-Knowing will reward your tarnished with the Fervor's Cookbook that holds the crafting recipe for these branches. By combining a delicate water lily of unalloyed gold that was thought to be beloved by the Imperium Miquella, and a sacramental bud, which is believed to originate from a strain of buds cultivated with Miquella's own blood. Your Tarnished can harness the power of Miquella's bewitching branches and turn enemies into allies when pierced with the branch. A puff of pink mist, turning foe into friend. Miquella's blood can be found everywhere, even as far as the lands of Liurnia, where they've been crystallized, or in the snowfields, where they're covered in rime, and throughout nearly everywhere in the lands between, Miquella's lilies can be found, signifying faith in his Halic tree. The Empyrean Miquella is loved by many people. Indeed, he has learned very well how to compel such affection. But what is the nature of this power? Why, Miquella steals their heart, and he makes them forget. When Miquella destroys his Great Rune, his piece of the Elden Ring, its enchantment is broken, and all of those bewitched by him begin to remember. Ansbach remembers that he attempted to free his Lord of Blood from enchantment until he had his own heart stolen.
The fog that vexed my aging faculties has been lifted, and follies better left forgotten haunt me once again.
Thiolier remembers the poison, the sweet sleep of death, and the pull to hear the voice of Miquella's other half once more, for her to smile for him, and him alone.
I'm feeling rather lost, haunted by memories of St. Trina, her visage, her scent, the lure of velvety sleep.
The Horn-Sent Potentate remembers all that he has lost, his home, his family, his culture, his crimes, his hate. How could he forget?
In vengeance for the flames, my blade I wield. How could I allow myself to forget? Revenge alone assures me peace of mind.
But when Miquella steals your Tarnished's heart, it makes no difference, because he cannot make you forget. You can never forget. And neither can Miquella. No matter how hard you try, you will always remember. Beginning to end, to beginning to end. A flash of white light and the fallen leaves telling a story. Miquella's power is one that allowed him to compel affection, bewitch the world, and manipulate causality so everything would be where it needed to be for your Tarnished to complete this journey, so they could slay Radahn, fell Mohg, burn the Sealing Tree, and bring back Miquella as a god. After the god is slain, the last piece of the puzzle is revealed. Everything was leading to this moment, for Miquella to show you the truth. This isn't just a memory. It's a different place and a different time.
I wanted to...
It's what he wanted you to see. When your Tarnished touches Miquella's memory, there is a flash of light, and then you're able to see his memories. It's the same flash of light when entering the Erd Tree at the end of Elden Ring. The same flash of light when Marika changes into Radagon. The same flash of light when the Elden Ring is mended, or when it's destroyed. The same flash of light when the deaths of the Tarnished are undone. The same flash of light when your Tarnished crosses the fog at the start of Elden Ring. The same flash of light when a falling star bites the earth, unlocking the fates. And the same flash of light after your Tarnished lies down in a shallow grave in the crumbling city of Farum Azula. After the storm starts twisting in the opposite direction. After the stones reform and pillars are rebuilt. And your Tarnished is brought to the Dragonlord, whose seat lies at the heart of the storm beyond time, where he once dwelled eternally, until your Tarnished slew him, perhaps so they could use a needle of unalloyed gold. Time is light, and the light of Miquella is brighter than all others. The same flash of light when linking the flame. Lost sorcery from Ulasil, land of ancient golden sorceries. Repairs equipped weapons and armor, includes weapons with exhausted durability. While the effects of this spell are rather subtle, its foundations are a well-guarded secret. Light is time, and the reversal of its effects is a forbidden art. Gideon was right. He learned the truth when he glimpsed into the will of Marika. A man cannot kill a god. A Tarnished will never be Elden Lord, because from beginning to end to the beginning, the story will always be remembered, even after it's finished. And it will be remembered again and again, by you or somebody else. And the god Miquella is the memory of this world. Trapped in the mind of a child cursed for eternity, this world and all that it is will never be forgotten, no matter what you or anyone else tries to do. Miquella will always remember, copied and duplicated again and again, always remembering. Memories of all shown in light, and memories of everything hidden by shadow. Godhood is Miquella's prison, a caged divinity beyond saving. While Miquella can make people forget, he can also help them to remember. When your Tarnished finds Millicent in agony, her flesh writhing with scarlet rot, her sleep haunted with nightmares, it takes away who she is and what she could ever hope to be. To rot and decay and stay in one place. To suffer alone and not know why. She begs your Tarnished to not get close. But if they have one of Miquella's unalloyed gold needles, she can have it pierce her flesh, and she can move again. She can become whole once more. This isn't like a bewitching branch or a charm, because with the needle buried in her flesh, she can begin to recall, but dimly, her destiny. By remembering, Millicent can be who she chooses to be, not what the rot or the nightmares make her. If your Tarnished begins to forget, to lose themselves to madness, one of Miquella's needles can help them remember as well. A needle to weave them back together, allowing one to cheat fate and turn back time, leaving only a memory. Remembering is hard, but it's important. The research into memory has made significant progress, particularly in understanding the neural mechanism behind memory formation and retrieval, even going as far as to be able to pinpoint specific regions in the brain to the cellular level. There are still many unanswered questions, but what is clear is that memories are not stored intact, and what is considered a memory may be stored in different parts of the brain and then reassembled. Sometimes, the brain will literally block the memories until such time as it's safe for them to be remembered. Psychologist Carl Jung would describe these memories as part of the shadow self, the part of the psyche that people repress or hide from themselves, including trauma. With these memories, it can be difficult to bring them to light. It can literally be painful. The body can react as if the memory isn't something that was, but is actively happening right now. Increased heart rate, rapid breathing, nausea, dizziness, tension, like all of the blood in the body is screaming, "Let me out." Feelings of numbness, of disassociation, like floating above your body, or just in another place entirely. To get away from the here and now, because the phantoms and the ghosts of what was will not leave you be. It feels safer to let them live in the shadows and pretend like they're forgotten. And that's only what's remembered so far. But there are more, and they're terrifying. Remembering is hard, but telling stories isn't.
The fallen leaves tell a story.
And the story that is told is the one that Miquella wants you to see. The story of the lands between, of the people who lived there, and the world that it was. A story to make the world a gentler place. Elden Ring as a video game is an interactive piece of art. To experience its story, discover its world, and meet its characters, you need to give something of yourself. Your time, your effort, your mind, and your body. Unlike a book or a movie where it can be passively experienced with minimal effort, Elden Ring challenges its audience to think, to fight, to fail, and most importantly, to remember. It wants its players to immerse themselves in its world and use their imagination to bring it to life, to use your Tarnished as a vessel to think of its characters as real people and to struggle alongside them. Elden Ring does this not just because it wants to tell its audience a story, but because it wants us to understand it. The story is not about the Tarnished, gods and demigods. It's about you and whatever you see in it. For instance, when first introduced to Melina, she doesn't look at your Tarnished. She looks at you.
I offer you an accord.
At the top of the world where the flame would bring ruin, Melina looks down at your Tarnished. Then she looks up at you.
Thank you for guiding me here.
And if you break her heart and favor fire, she looks you in the eye and promises to bring the death that all men must die.
Destined death.
But if Melina is gone and you find that ice will suffice, then Ranni will look you in the eye and offer her hand.
Let us go together.
For your Tarnished to be her consort eternal. The marriage of two peculiar dolls. The fourth wall is an imaginary barrier that separates the audience from the performers in a work of art. It's not a literal wall, but something that figuratively separates the world of fiction to the real world. It disallows the real world from interfering with the one in the story, and is based on the idea that the audience suspends their disbelief and willingly accepts the fictional nature of the story to immerse themselves in the experience. However, with Elden Ring, the audience is also an active participant in the story. The player takes on the role of audience, actor, and writer. We're allowed to break down the barriers between what is fantasy and what isn't. We're allowed to wave our hand and change the story the way we see fit. We're allowed to take the broken pieces that have been left behind, weave them in ways that reflect who we are, and write our own stories to create new memories. By looking directly at the screen, the characters within the story are acknowledging that it was you, and not the Tarnished, who is in control. If you give a piece of yourself trying to build this story, how can this world be forgotten? This world is yours as much as it is theirs. It's why people on YouTube look directly into their camera lenses. It's so we can mimic human interaction. This isn't real, but we try to make believe it is. Elden Ring has been breaking the fourth wall even before the game was released. In December 2021, 2 months before the launch date, the Bandai Namco Europe YouTube channel published the Elden Ring story trailer, the description reading, "The Storyteller Speaks." In it, the storyteller, who we would later learn to be Ranni the Witch, recalls the events that would lead to the Shattering War, the plots and the murders, that this world is in disrepair and is awaiting the arrival of the Elden Lord to fix it. Then, she looks directly into the camera and beckons us, the audience, to take the crown, buy Elden Ring, become the Elden Lord, be part of the story. So while the story is best experienced by playing the game for yourself and filling in the gaps the way you see fit, it can be challenging to do so if not accustomed to Elden Ring's method of storytelling, because Elden Ring also wants us to come together and share this story with each other. This video would not have been possible for me to do on my own. It's only thanks to all of the people who have ever poured their hearts and souls into understanding Elden Ring and sharing their work with the world am I able to do something like this. I would not be able to share my story without the stories of others. You're never alone, even if it sometimes feels like you are. At the very start of Elden Ring, on a new character, your Tarnished will not be allowed to leave this room unless they pick up the following item: Tarnished's Wizened Finger. It is used to write messages for players in other worlds to be able to read. A finger of corpse wax, so emaciated that the bone is visible. It is a relic of those who came before, left to help those who would come after. Let's leave a message for the world. Let me know if you find it. If you wanted to see more messages, you could use a script stone. Words are gregarious things, drawn to one another, much as people are. You know, the sole reward for completing Shadow of the Erd Tree isn't just a memory. It's also a circlet of light. The circlet of light which adorned Miquella's head as he returned in divine aspect. It has begun to fade into nothingness. This circlet was to be the very foundation upon which Miquella's Age of Compassion would be built, should it have ever come to pass. Smithing Master Hugh was tasked by Queen Marika to smith a weapon that could slay a god, but he never said which one. There's still one more ending to Elden Ring. There's still one more choice we have to make. So if you wanted to know how the story really ends, if you wanted to know how Miquella can change a memory, you would choose the Prophet as your Tarnished origin, and look to the end of the story. The knight had urged him to touch the withered arm, so he did. He had not heard her approach, yet a passivity took hold of him, and he was not alarmed. As he stepped out into the gravesite plain, her question echoed in his mind.
Were you guided here by kindly Miquella?
The black swordsman thought better not to respond. He was here for one thing, and one thing only. A cool breeze drifted by, and on it was a scent he was all too familiar with. Burnt corpses, rotted flesh, the smell of death, the signs of war. In the distance, something dark, twisted, and broken loomed, gold escaping from its heart. A black shadow cast over all. The black swordsman readied his weapon.
Before Aegon's death, the last of the Valyrian pyromancers hid his song in the steel.
From my blood come the prince that was promised. And his will be the song of ice and fire.